Before we get into the video, I'm going to shout out the sponsor right here so I don't have to interrupt. Bing Bang Boom World Anvil. World Anvil is a world-building tool and platform that you can use online for your RPG games, including Dungeons & Dragons. You can import maps, characters, and all the lore and notes you want. They have a family tree system, a way to put notes on a map, and then in that map, put more notes, and then put another map inside the map, so it's like this really cool map inside a map inside a map. You can also now roll dice, put in stats, make articles. There's so many things you can do with World Anvil, you guys. Get started today with my code XP to level 3 for 20% off your subscription. There's a link down below. Runesmith! You've posted cringe and now it's time to die. I'll use my ultimate power to strip you of your title. Be prepared. This is a response video to Logan, also known as the Runesmith, who made a video called Why D&D Feels Too Slow. I watched his video multiple times and yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that I agree with. His points are pretty well illustrated. I guess he's pretty good at what he does. This video I'm making right now is not an attack on Logan. He's not dumb or crazy. This isn't to like roast him or anything. I just have different thoughts than what he illustrated in his video. He goes through 3 major points that to him slow down D&D a lot. His main solution, which he mentions at the beginning of the video, is because we overthink it and use too many rules. Which is a little hyperbolic, but I get where you're going. Logan compares it to Occam's razor, which is a theory that entities should not be multiplied unnecessarily. Which is interesting because Occam's razor can kind of go both ways. Even though its base definition is to be used against things that are overcomplicated, you can also make an argument that Occam's razor can be used the other way around, where just because something is simple does not mean it's right. Logan effectively thinks that D&D takes too long because too much stuff gets in the way. I disagree with this take so much that I made this video. I'm gonna break down some of his points, arguments, and solutions and show why D&D isn't slow and the true hidden meaning behind Logan's words that I think motivated him to write this script and make this video in the first place. Before we get into it, let me remind you all that Logan is my sworn enemy! No, really guys, this isn't beef, this isn't drama, we just disagree. Logan and I have been friends for a long time and I'm pretty sure he's gonna send a thumb in response to this video and say, different strokes for different folks. Alright, so the way that we're going to do this is basically run through the points Logan expressed in the video and I'll provide my thoughts behind his statements. I'm not going to cherry pick and twist his words. I'm going to be as respectful as I can and run through all the points that he makes in this video, while also not trying to make this video 30 minutes long. We're trying to be more positive here on XP to level 3. After the introduction, Logan's first point on why D&D is too slow is the opening. He basically says every DM starts their session by describing surroundings and where the players are currently, and then they don't make anything happen.
The players are launched into an open ocean without any means of moving in any direction.
I often run my games like this. As Logan said hyperbolically, every DM does this. He doesn't actually mean every DM does this, but a lot of DMs do this, me included. This is the primary reason many DMs recap last game, so most players know what happened last time. You're not doing a great job as a dungeon master if you're just starting the game and the players have 0 direction, which is exactly what Logan brought up. Now, a strong opening into the game can definitely motivate players right into the action. This is the point where the DM hands the reins to the players and allows them to decide what will happen in the game. This is the back and forth, two-way street of Dungeons & Dragons. The DM sets up a thing, the players respond, and then the DM gives them more, and then it goes back and forth for hours and hours and hours until it's 2 in the morning, and you didn't realize how long you were playing the game. This is pretty much the beauty of role-playing games, that the DM is not in charge of everything. I think what Logan is complaining about is indecisive players. Now, here's a point I'm going to bring up a lot in this video. I'm going to compare a lot of Logan's points to this other role-playing game system that we both really like called City of Mist. Logan, I know, really likes City of Mist, and I'm not using it as a way to go, hey idiot, remember how you like this? Well, you're wrong and stupid. Logan actually brings it up in his video, and I'm pretty certain he likes it a lot more than Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason I bring it up now is because this argument of a game starting with the players having to take the narrative forward and decide what to do is the exact gameplay loop of City of Mist. The entirety of City of Mist is that there's almost no dungeon master whatsoever. In fact, it's called an MC, a master of ceremonies. And the players themselves are the ones who are kind of describing what's going on. They kind of narrate the game. The MC just kind of either lets things happen, brings things in, or tells them yes or no. But it's mostly completely up to the players on what they want to do and accomplish and what they want their scene in this movie-style role-playing game to look like. To me, this is a natural part of games, and not to get a little theoretical, but even life. You take initiative in something. This isn't the DM's job to constantly throw players into an exploding lava volcano wipeout obstacle course. A lot of D&D games are going to start with, you guys are here, this is what you did last time, with that information, what do you do? But Logan goes further on to kind of explain his point, which is this.
Suddenly we all have to figure out a plan, even though we probably had one when we left off and just forgot. But every party member's differences shine here, in a bad way, when they start disagreeing on what to do for the next hour and a half. And that's not really their fault, because they sat down to roleplay, so they're gonna slam down the gas pedal on their character's personality, except their only outlet right now is the other players.
Arguing with one another is still role-playing. Sure, some people may not find it as fun as relaying your tragic backstory, or buying things, or discussing the Waterdeep stock market. This may sound strange, but deciding what to do at the beginning of a D&D game can be a lot of fun. Getting to strategize, weigh your options, consider outcomes. That's like prime role-playing. You get to think and consider your abilities, the people you've met, the actions you've taken, the consequences, the story the DM has laid out, the world, where you've been, what your character cares about, and so on. I don't understand why Logan is caught up on this part of the game being a slog. Decisions matter so much in role-playing games. It's what sets them apart from literally every other medium. In a video game, your consequences don't really matter that much because you can always go back a save or even replay the game. In Dungeons and Dragons, your choices are permanent and you can't go back on them. So yeah, I think they're gonna be a little important. I actually have the opposite problem where the players do the opposite and they just rush forward to the last thing that we remember without considering any of our other options. I find this so frustrating as a player because I care about everything else and what we could do. Logan goes on to explain what Dungeon Masters should do because of this.
Dungeon Masters, please have a direction planned at the start of the session, and let your players know immediately what it is. Don't have them figure it out. This isn't a mystery and you're not making it interesting by being quiet. The beginning of the session is the tutorial. The least you can do is let them know that they can press A to jump.
I agree with Logan's point here. The very first session and most sessions definitely require a catalyst for the story. You need to have a direction for your party, of course. My question to Logan is more, what D&D games are you playing where you're starting the game in the middle of a barren field with zero direction on where to go? I have to assume that the D&D games that you are playing are the ones where you are getting to go in multiple directions and accomplish multiple things, because the party has to obviously argue about something. So I'm confused. You want a direction to go, which you have. The party is willing to argue about this, but you don't want the DM to give multiple ways to go? Is that what I'm understanding? You basically want the DM to give one single direction to the party and ignore anything else that they could do just so the game can actually begin. I think this is amazing advice for session 1. Session 1 of your D&D games has to have some sort of prompt, goal, and action. It's still the player's choice on what they decide to do, and you really shouldn't be like, go here, this way, this is where the quest is. But that can be really, really helpful for session 1 games because there's no prior knowledge. It's just, here's the game now, what are you going to do? Still, my point stands. Do you need to be reminded on how to jump with the A button every single time you pick up Super Mario 64? So from this section or chapter of your video, I've gathered this as a perfect fast start to a D&D game. We start the game, we last left off in a town. The party learned that there's a troll hiding in the town somewhere. They must slay it before anyone gets hurt. We left off last game with the party deciding where to get leads on the troll's whereabouts. A guard told them that it could be a tavern, the sewers, or the slums. No time for discussions. Suddenly a man runs up to you and says, I think I saw the troll at the tavern. Well, let's discuss if we should go to... I think it would be better if we went to the sewers. Less people could get hurt. Yes, but more witnesses at the tavern. Maybe we could go there to inquire on its whereabouts. Oh no, my players are bickering. This is not fun. This is the slowest part of the game. They're deciding where to go. I just wanted them to go to the tavern immediately. I think the only way as a player in this scenario that you would find this slow and boring is if you just didn't care about what anyone was saying. Or you don't care about the outcome of the scenario. You just want to go do the thing with no one disagreeing with you. Logan then goes on to his second point, which is combat.
And no matter how well planned combat was, the game still comes to a massive halt when everyone rolls initiative. Sure, it's iconic, but only because of how often it happens.
Initiative is iconic because the term roll initiative is when the action starts. It's the buckle your seatbelt, mother. It's time to fight a troll. Now, I know that's not what Logan actually means. He's more saying that rolling initiative is iconic in the game system, and that it's been in the game system for a long time, and that's why everybody likes it.
I personally really don't like the initiative structure, and turn-based combat is naturally much slower than the actual fight. D&D combat feels like XCOM if you give everyone one character, and then the Dungeon Master controls 8 other characters but doesn't use any strategy.
Logan, who hurt you?
I don't have a great solution for this, because it's a core mechanic, but let me speed it up a tad. First, stop using initiative rolls. You're married to them now, but they're abusive and they're lazy. Put the ring down, walk out the door, and try to experience new relationships. Broaden your horizons, try other systems, put the D4 up your butt.
So from what I'm gathering, too many players of D&D are just too married to initiative because it's iconic with Dungeons & Dragons. It's just so ingrained into our heads we can't even possibly think about using something else. So Logan's solution is that he doesn't have one because it's too core and ingrained into the game, and you should use passive initiative or try other systems and use what they use. First of all, those 3 picture examples that you gave us, Pathfinder uses a rolled initiative system, Shadowrun uses a rolled initiative system, even Furry Pirates uses a rolled initiative system. So maybe, just maybe, the millions of us who play role-playing games haven't been brainwashed into liking initiative. Maybe it just works because a lot of systems use it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to like D&D combat. I know very well that there are other combat systems that are probably more fun and straight to the punch and work a lot easier than other systems. But those systems aren't Dungeons & Dragons, and your idea that initiative is slow is your opinion. I don't think it's fair to tell everyone that the initiative system that we all use and like is abusive, wrong, and we should try something else. Basically, I disagree with this point from Logan purely just to say this initiative system works really well for what it is, and it works really well for a lot of other systems, and I don't think there's a really good way to avoid it, and shoving in things that make it quicker will, in theory, make it a lot quicker, but you're sacrificing so much, like dice rolling and the randomness of initiative just to save a couple of minutes. And I think that that is not as fun. But hey, it's not like you can't listen to Logan at all. If you enjoy this more as a Dungeon Master, as a player, then just do it. He like I said at the beginning of the video, Logan isn't an idiot. He's not wrong in any way here. I just disagree with him. I think this is not a good way to save time for Dungeons & Dragons.
During combat, you can have too many players and too many enemies. What you want to do is essentially cut as much fat from combat as you can, and don't keep secrets that you don't need to. Let players know armor classes, use average damage rolls, make similar enemies all act at the same time.
Totally agree that you should cut fat in combat. I've learned this from my campaigns and years of being a dungeon master. Unless absolutely necessary, like your players are deciding to encounter a huge amount of enemies at once, and this is the direct choice that they made and they want this, you don't need to have a combat with 20 things in it. It may sound really cool to newer dungeon masters, but I promise you, the amount of stress you will go through as a dungeon master to keep track of 20 things at once is really not fun unless you can keep track of all of that. Using average damage is awesome. I do it all the time. I don't need to constantly roll dice, but if you as a DM enjoy the random dice and can keep the combat rolling while you do it, then just do it. That's what I do with online virtual tabletops. I like to do the rolled dice because it's just as fast as doing the average dice. Making similar enemies act at once is a great way to speed up combat, but can easily overwhelm the player players so long as it's not 10 goblins at once, because you'll just TPK because action economy. But not keeping secrets, giving players armor class, I don't agree with this at all. Basically, you want every combat to be everyone has the same exact turn, enemies do the same damage the whole time, AC is always known. That to me sounds way more boring, as every combat would get stale after the first round just to save a couple of minutes. I don't really think that necessarily speeds up your game anyways, because you're going to have to explain the AC. You're going to have to pre-write down all of the encounters, further subjecting that your game is a set certain way. They're gonna go here, they're gonna encounter this, I already have the initiative prepared, and since they already know the AC, it's just gonna be a combat with, I do this, I go there, I do this, I go there. There's no room for creativity here. It's just, I know if I hit, and I know the damage it does, that can get stale really fast.
And a very big one, let players combine their turns. Completely remove the help action, and instead have people coordinate their stuff for Avengers-style combo moves. It's also really good because while other people are taking their turns, the players who are bored can still talk about what they're gonna do next, together.
Geez, Logan, first you tell us not to coordinate, now you want us to coordinate during combat. Joking aside though, I actually think this would make combat way slower. Mostly because in the middle of combat, having two different players talk about their turn while another player is trying to take their turn can really slow down the game and make everything a lot more monotonous. Because then you introduce cross-talking. Two players are now going to try to plan their turn while somebody else is planning their turn, and then they have to explain all their stats and abilities and spells and whatnot to them. It would just get so complicated, it wouldn't even be worth it. Plus, in the regular D&D combat environment, you can already do this. The help and ready action allow players to combine their turns and use them together. The great part about D&D combat is that its narrative opportunities are completely open to the players. Just like in City of Mist or 10 Candles, the narrative control is completely in the hands of the players during combat, allowing it to be creatively freeing. This is why people like to roll dice. You say that eventually excitement would be replaced by monotony, but I don't want to play in an RPG game where I just succeed at everything I do. Randomness is the exciting part of D&D. You've got it backwards. I don't understand how rolling a lot could eventually get boring. It's what actively changes up the game. This brings me to your third point. Debating a course of action goes on too long. You suggest a City of Mist rule where everyone only gets 5 actions before a scene ends. City of Mist works in scenes, and much like a movie, a scene ends after so many things happen. You also suggest using a timer or the threat of death, I assume. You say a swarm of rats, but I don't think you would want to start an encounter because that would add more time and take longer, because then you would have to roll initiative or go into this automated initiative, and now you would have to make a new initiative with the rats in it. God, it just sounds like you want to play a video game. Regardless, all of these options are great for high stakes moments. Maybe the walls are enclosing in on the players. They only have 5 actions to get something done. Or maybe they're sinking into a sand pit and you pull out the timer to decide what they're gonna do. Or maybe they are walking down a hallway and suddenly thousands of swarms of rats are coming at them, and that if they hit them, they're gonna die. But you say that this isn't for high stakes. This is for something like crossing a pit, which is just something the players can discuss. I forgot you hate that.
Waiting for the players to figure out how to cross a pit, and they're all mad at each other, bring out the hourglass. And then bring out the rat swarm. And whenever someone actually tries to cross the pit, just let them do it.
So ultimately, your advice is that if something takes too long, the DM should just let the player do what they want and immediately solve the problem with no rolling at all. In this idea of a fast game, just like the example earlier, the players are thrusted right into the tavern. Once the players arrive at the tavern, the troll is attacking. The DM tells everyone the AC of the troll, and the same cookie-cutter initiative is brought out. Rogue is always first, then the fighter and ranger go at the same time, and always coordinate their attacks because it's better, and they can't coordinate with anyone else because they're stuck in this basic initiative, and the wizard is last. After defeating the troll, the party must now decide on how to take a trophy back to the king, as proof for killing it. As the DM, you'll say it'll be difficult, as the troll is heavy, and to cut off a piece of its leathery body would be difficult. The party tries to come up with a plan to cut off parts of the troll, and the DM decides that this is taking too long and gives everyone only 5 actions to tear apart the troll. They all then decide what exactly their actions should be and who has the best skills. This conversation is now longer and no longer about the creativity of the situation, and it's all about who can succeed on the highest roll. The DM pulls out a timer and says they have 2 minutes to figure this out. The ranger just gives up and decides to cut off its nose. The DM says it succeeds with no roll because that would take too long, and they move on to get their reward. Clearly a D&D game filled with choices, stakes, and variety. Yeah, I know that's ridiculous, but that's kind of how I see Logan's advice here, just to put it plainly. And to be honest, and to be fair to him, this isn't what he wants. What I'm hoping is that my viewpoint here will further push his mind and imagination to discover new ways for him to play the game that isn't destructive, because in my opinion, a lot of this advice is destructive. And I think the real ideas Logan has in his head is not that D&D is super slow. I think Logan doesn't want to wait for other people to decide. He wants to know what is going on and to be in control of the situation, and take on the game with his own wit and understanding without anyone to slow him down, which to me just sounds like he wants to play Minecraft. And I think that this is my advice to you, Logan, or to anyone who agreed with his video. There is a joy in the people you get to play the game with. You get to have a shared experience that combines the wit and sometimes stupidity of your friends. D&D isn't about winning, or being the best, or knowing everything, or even telling the best story. It's about the fun you have with everyone around the table, and sometimes that doesn't have to be perfectly acted out. I implore you to explore the minds and thoughts of others because they can very much surprise you, and together you can create something that wouldn't have been possible by yourself. Anyways, make sure to have fun in your games, guys, and don't take this too seriously. Logan is my friend, and he was at my wedding last week and said some really kind words that I will take to my grave. So I love this man. If you guys go flame him, that is basically a slight against me, and yes, I'll take it personally because he is my best friend. Okay, anyways, that's the end of the video.